Hello everyone, this is the Survival Channel. And today on my review is the folding knife RECON 1 Tanto. From the company Cold Steel. Now I will conduct a series of tests with him. I'll tell you more about the knife. I will share my opinion. So what do we have? And we have a medium-sized folding 1 knife with geometry of shooting American tank, which, according to the company, is the standard for a folding tactical knife and intended primarily for military personnel, law enforcement officers, employees of other security agencies, as well as the Ministry of Emergency Situations, rescuers and firefighters. Opens in 3 main ways. First method is classical by means of the influence of the second hand. Second method by the action of the thumb of the working hand on a stick located at the base. Apply pressure with your thumb, and the blade comes into working position. This option is relevant for both the right and for the left hand respectively. And I draw your attention to the fact that the pin is asymmetrical, with priority for opening with the right hand. Well, in the third way, inertial or so-called shaking method, the knife has a reliable axial unit with the ability to tighten assembly on bronze washers, which, in addition, it is reinforced with secondary plastic spacers. Lock system 3 Adlog, which is currently the most reliable in the world. But we definitely agree with this statement. We'll check again today. In a complex form, the blade lies strictly in the center without any asymmetry or tilt. What is one of the indicators of good build quality? The blade geometry is made in American Tanto style. Features slight narrowing from the base, a sharp edge and an additional stiffening rib. The total length of the blade is 10 and 2 centimeters, thickness at the butt 330 mm. The blade has wide concave slopes with a bevel. Powder steel, with 35 VN branded black coating. Total weight of the knife 150 grams. Curved handle, with adaptation, most likely, to a fencing grip, rather than under the classical flat section. Made from G10. The surface has this rough texture for better grip. In the front part along the butt there's a bend with notches for the convenience of placing a large finger and additional control of the knife during work. Also, here we see clearly defined subdigital notches, one of which goes into a full-fledged emphasis. Anti-slip finger on the cutting edge during work. In the back, lanyard holes, well and typical for any folding knife. Metal clip clothespin. Also worth noting that the knife comes with a clothespin for left-handed people, which can be easily screwed on from the backside. At first glance, the handle seems quite comfortable for a folding knife, but the final conclusions, as always, I will do it after all the work is done. Now let's check what this knife really is, and we will draw conclusions. And traditionally we'll start by checking the sharpness, but let's talk about basic sharpness out of the box. In my case it is not necessary, because this knife accordingly it was already in use. Of course I tweaked it a little, but nevertheless we must understand at what intensity do we start testing, and is it enough in order to reveal the full functionality. Honestly, I didn't bother much with sharpening this knife, just slightly corrected after the previous owner. Well, let's see. Well friends, it's not perfect, but quite good. Overall 5-. I think we can evaluate the sharpening and it will be enough for us. Enough to reveal all its functionality. Let's add some leather goods to our review. Thick cutting 530 thick, maybe even about 6 millimeters. The task is not easy in principle. which the knife handles with a solid 5 points. Friends, despite this, it would seem not at all intended for stabbing, in terms of the fact that it has a wide cutting edge. With this knife, if you have certain skills, you can also inject quite successfully. For example, defending against wild dogs. The sharpness, I will definitely add this to the testing as well, to see how much. Lucky knife geometry, in general, and the design of the cutting edge is suitable for such tasks, well, and at the same time to watch. How well does a cutting edge hold its sharpness? Everyone knows perfectly well that the cut of the rope of the Veloco rope contributes to the rapid dullness in general. Let's figure it out. I will make 20 cuts according to the standard. I don't see any point anymore. And control. "20th cuts, friends." Well, in principle, the rope cuts quite confidently. The only thing, it might still be a little uncomfortable. Cut with a tip like this, where the cutting edge is more oval. You can stretch it like this, and here you need to catch this point of contact of the corner. With surface, well, as they say, it's all lyrical. Let's see. How did this affect the sharpness? For me, it's a little worse. Began to cut the knife. Although maybe I'm being picky, of course. Well, it still seems to me that he started to fluff up a little. More precisely, he was messing around before that. I'll repeat myself again, I didn't sharpen it perfectly. There was no such goal. But now he started to wave it harder. However, it copes with paper. And here you can't argue. Okay, at this stage, I would put the rope cut. Well, probably 4 points, and to maintain sharpness. So far also 4 points. Let's see how the blade and steel behave next, respectively. I'm also interested in real penetration capabilities, the sharpness of this knife. After all, there are a lot of questions about the geometry of tantalum, and this will be checked traditionally in 2 stages. The first stage 1 will try to break through the thick one. Leather briquette made of 5 layers of chebrac. Total thickness is about 230, maybe about 3 centimeters. The task is not easy in principle, but we will complicate this task with the second stage, punching a briquette from 3 layers of profile metal. Yes, this is blasphemy, but it gives answers to the questions I need. Papara parapam. Times 2. 3. 4. 5 unexpectedly on departure without any problems at all. Well, guys, we need to sort this situation out to the end. I really don't want to ruin the knife, bought with one's own money. Not cheap at all. But as they say, you can't take words out of a song. I'll limit myself to 3 hits. Here are the incoming ones. And here are the outgoing holes. That is, a blade. The metal broke through. Now let's see how it's displayed. On the edge. The camera is focusing now. And you will understand that the tip has remained virtually in full. In order. Insignificant. Some insignificant. On these points there is a dullness, but talk about some global chips or there is no need for classes at all. Honestly, the result really pleasantly surprised and impressed me. Thank God, I thought, that the tip will chip off now. It will have to be sharpened again. Well, here's the question that interests me personally, as in perhaps probably virtually any folding phone owner. Knife, how quickly, if necessary, I will be able to extract this knife and bring it into working position. For example, for that, to reflect a potential source of danger. I am especially interested in this given that this knife is not a flipper, and there is no hook of Emerson and Leo Wea, by means of which the knife is opened by just taking it out of your pocket. Respectively, this question takes on a double relevance, and I will check in the most frequently used position, namely by hooking the clip in the front classic trouser pocket. Friends, as you have probably already seen, despite the absence, specialized devices for fast opening knife, still with a minimum of dexterity, this knife can be used as well, and that's enough. Quickly extract and bring to combat readiness. It's obvious that by and large this test, I would say individual. After all, everyone has their own speed and dexterity of hands. However, some average statistical indicators. In my specific example, I think I managed to get it. We've sorted this out. Let's move on. Well, the wood should be plain to complete the picture. It's obvious that this knife is still a priority, more for city wear. But nevertheless, such a test will give an idea of how sharp is the knife geometry in general. Well, and how comfortable is the handle when performing power work, including Friends, I think you can see everything perfectly well already, and in principle without my additional comments. The blade cuts into the wood very aggressively, but at the same time he has a cut, also controlled. That is, if you want, you can remove just a little bit. Well, what if you need more? Made an effort, and huge pieces flew to the sides. Just for the sake of objectivity, give me some more absolutely dry wood. We'll do some planing now too. Maybe there will be some difference. Well, a little less willingly, no matter how you look at it. And with absolutely dry, viscous wood. In principle, everything is always more complicated, but nevertheless, the cut is still confident. Actually, everything is already clear to me with this question, as well as the convenience of the handle and that. Like this one. The knife leaves behind huge shavings, and by the quality of planing, and I would probably give him a cut of wood 5-. It barely reaches super ideal. and most likely this is due to the base sharpening angle. I don't know, it's probably 45 to 50 degrees here. If you drag it, say, under 35, I think you will cut. Even better. Well, as for the convenience of the handle, I can't give it higher than a 3. No matter how you look at it, the handle is flat, does not provide sufficient volume for maximum comfort of holding, especially when you have to squeeze your wrist tightly, performing strength work. However, it is worth noting that the ergonomics are very good. That is, the bend of the handle under the finger grooves and so on, everything is where it needs to be. That's actually why 3 plus or 4 minus, depending on whether you are an optimist or a pessimist. Well, of course, I'm interested. The question of the real destructive power of this knife. I think it's not just me, but you are also interested to know, what is this Tanto really capable of? The essence of the test is extremely simple. I have it packed in a thick material trouser leg, 230 kilograms of meat. Now I will deliver slashing thrusts, and we will be able to assess the extent of the damage that leaves this knife. So friends, well, it's a pretty deep cut. If we now pay attention to the fat trace, then you will see that the blade has entered here, by this mark. Honestly, I expected a much worse result from Tantoid. Well, look here too, penetration depth. Approximately somewhere around 430 centimeters. In any case, this is fraught with profuse bleeding. Well, and in case of hitting a blood-bearing artery, this is a fatal outcome. Overall, I am pleasantly surprised. Now let's check the injection. Similar picture, friends, despite it seeming. This is the kind of edge that is not quite suitable for this. The blade goes in without any problems, feeling almost no resistance. Overall, I can conclude, what is this tanking? Turned out to be a very predatory thing, and is capable of inflicting quite significant damage to both insects and on the stake and blow. Well, no matter how boring and uninteresting, I didn't count the food cutting test. But there is simply no way to bypass this test. Because, well, friends, 99% of all users perform such tasks. And out of these 99, 90 only perform such tasks. That is, in fact, in urban conditions, carrying a knife is often a characteristic of that, to cut myself some sandwiches. Yes, it doesn't sound heroic, but at least it's true. So, friends, I'll just cut up a few products now to fill the gap in this matter. Well, let's begin. Enough! Easy and convenient. The blade maneuvers on the surface. Take off. Basically even the skin of young potatoes. It doesn't pose any problems. Which is quite expected. For performing tasks in fine motor skills blade length. Optimally. We've sorted out the potatoes. Number 2 of our carrots are featured in the program. Which first needs to be cleaned? Well, and then cut it. Eh. There are no problems with that either. Well, and the final chord, a small piece of a strategic product. For all time. Fat. No problem either, which is quite expected. In general, friends, perform minor tasks in the field kitchen, and not only field. You can do it with this knife without any problems. It's obvious that there is no relation there to the kitchen or there. He has no Swedish knives. But for simple everyday life, it is more than enough. Another logical question for any folding knife owner. And how reliable is his lock? Can you rely on him in a critical situation? Won't it happen? Trouble, and will it work out? At the most inopportune moment. And I will check this point in 2 stages. The essence of the test is extremely simple. In working position, I will deliver 10 blows with the butt of a knife on a piece of wood, and let's see how the lock will cope with such a load. This will be the first stage of verification. I'll put my fingers aside just in case. If anything happens, I might still need them. Let's go. In total, friends, 10 blows I delivered, not one closing. If anyone thought that I didn't hit hard enough, pay attention to the dents in the raw wood. As for the castle, let's first see if it still works. Yeah, it seems like there are no problems. There was no play, neither vertical nor horizontal. The first stage of the castle was successful. In principle, we can already say that it is reliable, but that's not all. Well, I still have to do the last test for today, in which in fact I will combine 3 tests at once. Firstly, I will work on a tin can, in order to check how good is the cutting edge, able to maintain its sharpness, and as a consequence, make a conclusion about the quality of heat treatment, but taking into account the why everyone praises steel with 35 Vienna powder so well. That supposedly it's some kind of super steel. I want to give one more non-target task. Namely, I will chop the bone. Yes, friends, it's a bone, a real powerful bone. I certainly don't recommend you do this. I myself will do it exclusively for the sake of sport. To sort this out once and for all, what is this mythical steel capable of? Well, and besides everything else, since I'm going to chop bone with this knife, accordingly, I will give additionally serious load on the lock. And this will be the second stage of testing the lock. Let me remind you that in the first stage, one hit with the hammer, that is, it actually gave a load from this side, and now carrying out chopping actions. We will hit the castle from the other side. This is actually a multi-move game. I really want to hope that the knife will cope with all this without any problems, otherwise it will be very offensive considering that. How much did I pay for it? But before the outrage began, let's see how sharp the blade was when it came to the final test. First, let's see and compare. For woodworking, well, I clearly don't feel any difference. Although not that much wood is needed. But working with paper will be a little more visual. No matter how you look at it. Well, and a knife with paper still copes. Another leaf, so to speak, for confidence and control. Yes, everything is fine with the paper, friends. Here as if there are no questions. So let's start all this chaos. I can already see the paint peeling off the blade. And along with her, my heart is breaking. Pay attention, that I stretch the tin through the entire length. For that, so that no one would have any doubts about the correctness. Test execution. No, friends, the paint has hardly come off. Honestly, I expected the worst result. I don't feel any difference in the wood. Paper is the main indicator in this matter. Everything is fine too. It got a little stronger, but the nose still copes with paper. From this we can draw a conclusion. What if you have to open for any reason? Tin cans are related work. From 1-2 uses. Critically, this will not affect the knife's performance. Or maybe it won't have an effect at all, so let's take a closer look right away. Me personally, I'm watching this part. The camera will focus now. She refuses to focus hard. Well. That's probably it. Now you have noticed these dotted lines, some gaps. Literally point by point. Overall, the cutting edge is practically has not undergone any changes. But as they say, that's all. More flowers. It's time for berries. In the form of this very serious oil. Well, let's go. The baby is flying. From the bone in all directions. I think here, basically without my comments, it is clear about the seriousness of the intention. I'll wipe off the grease now. Knife and we'll look at the cutting edge. Let's compare it on wood first. I don't feel any difference. Well, now the paper will put everything in order, in their places. And this bastard gave me the paper. Still cuts. Guys, for me it looks very serious. In fact, it's an indicator. Of course, he started cutting a little worse. But the fact is that he cuts paper. Remains a fact. So of course, let's take a closer look. Cutting edge. Come on. Pay attention here. That there are no changes at all. She still hasn't suffered. These are the pinpoint gaps that were in the front part. They stayed. I don't see any new ones. And lock. Still works. There was no backlash. Well, friends, I can state the fact that I was colossal, as they say. Keeps its brand. The steel is really good. I have no questions about heat treatment. I didn't set the target load. I think here it's like everything is clear. and there is no point in elaborating. And besides everything else, the lock confidently withstood the load. And here under this vector of application, and by all these three indicators, I can confidently give it 5 points. Let's sum it up. Based on the tests I have conducted, I can conclude, what is the folding knife Recon 1 with American tant geometry, in my opinion, can really be positioned as a folding knife. Increased strength and reliability. This knife is capable of withstanding serious, including non-targeted ones, critical loads confidently. And I would even say easily. I don't know about the tactical knife sample. I won't even get into this thicket, because the concept of tactics is common to most, differ from each other. But a model of reliability, I would probably call this knife simplicity and utility. I can attribute the following to the disadvantages of this knife, one explicit and one conditional. Only the price of this knife will be clear. At the time of review, it is 20,500 rubles. Official sources. Of course, you can try to find it somewhere. There are sales there, at discounts but cheaper than 17. 18 you won't find. If we take the secondary market, then cheaper than 15. This knife won't cost 16,000 either. Agree, friends, this is not at all budget friendly, and in my opinion, too expensive even for such a good quality knife. But again, most often someone buys 3 there. 5-7 folding knives, there are cheap ones or there are mid-price ones. In total, if you add up all the money spent, you will get at least 1 such Recon, or even 2 in general. Here's some food for thought. It's obvious that now many will rush to write again that Cold Steel is not to blame for this. All this is the dollar exchange rate and so on and so forth. Guys, we've talked about this 1,000 times. Yes, that's true, but as a buyer, I don't really care. I see a specific price, and for this price I buy a specific product. And accordingly I decide whether I can afford it or not. Everything else, as they say, is poetry. Well, and the second such conditional disadvantage. This is this. A muzzle at the base of the cutting edge. Honestly, this moment had me on edge. Cold Steel is really freezing. Pay attention to her. I don't know why they do this. Maybe their machines are set up like that. But nevertheless, this little thing, I will definitely grind it myself. This is of course a small thing. No ni now mina ona lichna rozrezet, vot sel I praktiski, 2 sm rezuzi kronki is za etigo poderano, v obsum asidao. CDO za taki dingi mazno, bilo by protosit clinic polnostu, k osnonim dostons fam etigo noza, new presda via sigo connectno otnesu ego, ogrom nij zapas proknosti inadas nosti, esedim a dumau nikto sport nebudit, testi vis pokazali nagladno. Zakastu a provodol kosens fini des via s nim. No iat des via nos parines, stoika I uvereno. Esse suda hoku otnesti. Prosto laconig no ispolmeni. A tos taco lublu, ne lublu evada t vis tenenavaroti, tam keki to pribludi I vis ostal no persi, vot edu variant kotorij ni blise via sigo podus? Dali. Connect no z otnesu horasi case vo stali, kodoro zadiz idet, napomna zadiz s35 vian. Sesno govra, anemnosko skepticiski iznikal no otnosilsa k adamo, I vosmos no gd to v glubine dusi sidle, cdo a2 vis panadamano, no druza testi pokezivot, cdo stal despotel no horsa, I hatu ne fantasia, a ustovzich sa fucked. sa1 plus a by vis taki. Nazval odnoznak no rukod. Rukod despotel no horoso ispolneno, oped z esli my rasmatravam dla vipolninia, povset anevnai zadak. Osin and Ravitsa, S. Tutski Zarenia ergonomiki, Dano Rukod Osin Gramano Ispolneno, Vise Visimos T. O. Situasi, EU.no Dorot Vo Vise 3 Variatia, 1 A Variatia Cogda V. Derzite Toxgazet Nakarakam, Hveda DLA Vipolninia Zadak V. Melkaj Modrike, 2 A Situatia A2 Classisesko Uderzani, Nuzadiz Vupsha Nikaki Somnini, Pal C. Takno Kuda Nato, Vis V. Opsum Hiroso, New A 3 E. Belazani Na Uvalaisenoj Distensi, Cogda, VV Opridilani Situation Nuzno Viagrat Vada D5, 7 SM Dopol Natelni Delini Klinka, Citabi Uz Dostavat Ducheli, No Priatom Samomu Ostavadsa SAVN Zoni Dosajimasti, Edensfano Gemona, Ustupat A2 Obimam, No A2 Kasatsa Tolko Vipolninia Silovi Rabid. I druza devishta objektivno, Casto li v vipolnate silovi rabodi skladnimi nazami, silno v atom somnaviz, DLA vsigo ostanogo, bolso jobum rukoati ne trebuitsa, vod etigo budid vipalm dostadogno, chrome togo pre takamobemi rukoati. A. Nos ne silno buded vam masad v carmane, esli rukod buded pula, nu sami panamade, A2 dobavit tolko discomforta, pre-transportirovki noza na carmane, sidvets fano. SA1 Nemilavaznin plusum danogo noza, subsfano A21 is kluchavai factorov, pokodoromu a seba ego v principe kubel, avlatsa universal nost. I presda vsigo, A2 universal nost v plane parametro vi razmerov, druza, danij nos po momu ninu popadad v zolatu saradinu. A nibolsaj I ne malenki. A menovat nahoditsa v tom v nejedramnam blazni, u mina estibol si nozi otkostel tipa I spadi, vozari I pokoroche. I vot ni hotelo CDO disratni, ne sliskum bolso, ne sliskum malenkoi, I vot sagodna my rasmutrili podobnij variant. I puzzlej SA1 plus kodorija obozneku. DLA conquered novad A2 modeli recon 1, A2 variative nost ispolninia klinkov, v kastnosti a seba vizal american tanta. Vizal a ego ne patomo, CDO u mina bolse lazit dusa ke dekomu ispolninu, a patomu CDO v mastebes dragami nizami, a praktiski so sklotni mi tanto itami ne rabodal, subspino sportive ne interest parasalil likni zelania, a tak connectno, ni bolse enravitsa kliniges ispolninium clip point. Chrome Togo sti 3 ij variant spear point. Is bolsoj verodnastu priobradu seba, SA1 recon 1 so vremenem, no wuz s klinkum clip point. I podvoda obsij zenominatel dobavlu otnoznekno. Danij nos budet, nadesnim pomisnikom v lubi sfera zinditelnosti. Podotit sorokaj category pulsavitalej. Nesana od obichni obavatalej. Gorodska zeitlej, taxi lubitalej piknikov, Velazok petesisvinikov itok dali. Nu itok DLA spravka, Peru raz A.nos a brawl s soboy kogdilazil vigori, ponotno, CDO nikaki tam superglobalni zadak and nave ipelno, ioni tam I ne trebitsa, nu odnako melki husband dalao. Nu esli ne delit vise pulsavidalej, na keki to concrete ni category, to puzzlej mozno skazad talk. CDO A.nos podoted vasem lubatilam nadesnosti. Prosto ti I castvanogo ispolninia. Druza esli u vas ostalis, sa keki libova prosi po danamo nozu, pasite smelo v commentary, ia posteras operative no na ni advedit. Chrome Togo, napasite na keki sa nozi od Brenda Colstil, v hodeli by uvade obzori na mon kanali, vis a2 a posteras usadivat, pre-planner of any dalne si video, nu a na atom voodoo s vami persetsa, I kak obigno hoku puzzled visem skasta, I krepko go zidarova.